Hi, my name is Joan Kane, and I'm one of the Senior Career Services Advisors here at Santa Monica College in the Career Services Center. And today, I hope to answer many of the questions that you have regarding the what, why, when, how, and where in regards to finding research opportunities as a STEM student. Some of the topics I'm going to be addressing with you today include what is research? Why research? What are types of research programs and positions that you might have now as well as in the future? What do you need to apply? When should you apply? What can you do to prepare for the application process now? What are some application tips? Where can you find summer research program opportunities? And finally, where do you go for assistance? So let's start off with defining what is research. Research is the exploration of a topic that one makes an original intellectual or creative contribution to a discipline. It can also help you understand or gain more knowledge of a certain topic. It also allows you the opportunity to investigate a question you may have had or have, but don't have any preconceived results. And just know that research can vary based on the discipline and industry, as well as that research can happen across many different industries and disciplines. So why do research? Why might you, as an undergraduate student, as a student at SMC, do research? Here are some of the benefits. As a student, you might want to explore more things about your career and your major. And so research allows you the opportunity to explore different career interests as well as demonstrate some of your skills that you have learned through past classes and labs, past work experiences, and so forth. You're able to apply those skills in a real life, hands-on situation. It also allows you to enhance your resume for a future job when you are planning to transfer to a four-year university, and or if you are thinking about applying to graduate and or professional school. For undergraduates, research allows you the opportunity to identify mentors and those who might have similar career interests or academic interests. I believe also that students like to do research because they want to build on their presentation skills, or one day also want to publicize or publish their work. Finally, research allows you to contribute your knowledge and also impact the world. But just know that the research you conduct and the findings that you may achieve have impacts on society, whether the impacts can benefit society or harm society and the planet. And so as you're thinking about doing research, make sure to factor in whether the research that you are planning to do or are doing can impact those today as well as in the future, and what type of impact. As an undergraduate, you might participate in one of these two formal research programs. You might be looking at participating in a research program or opportunity that happens during the school year. These are opportunities that might fall during the fall and spring semester for a school that is on a semester system, or for those who are on a quarter system during the fall, winter, and spring terms. Just note that most likely that you will also be taking courses at the same time that you are conducting research. Many of these research opportunities also require that you complete or fulfill a certain number of hours per week, every week. Typically, those range between 20 plus hours a week. Another formal research program that you may have heard of takes place in the summer. These are summer programs that on average run 10 to 12 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks. They're held at different institutions, organizations, research labs, and again, they happen during the summer. Most of those programs will also require that students who participate fully engage themselves in the program, meaning they may not require or may not allow you to enroll in another class, hold another part-time job, or participate in other research opportunities. They also start at different times of the summer. Some may begin in May, June, or July. When you're participating in a research opportunity, these are some roles or positions that you might fill. You may ask to be a volunteer. These positions allow for the greatest flexibility in time commitment and experience level, but it does require that you reach out to a faculty or research lab or facility to ask if they have any volunteer opportunities and what does that commitment look like for you. Some research labs or opportunities may even ask that you receive academic credit. You might even participate in an on-campus research opportunity through an independent studies course. When receiving credit, you may earn anywhere between 1 and 4 course units through an independent studies course, or 1 to 4 units by enrolling in our internship class. If you're thinking about obtaining credit for your participation, or you are required to receive academic credit, you will want to speak to either your department chair and or an academic counselor. Your department chair can share with you available independent studies courses or faculty who have taught independent studies courses in the past. Your academic counselor could help plan courses that you could take along with your independent studies course. Your academic counselor is there to help you with your ed plan. A third position that you might hold in a research facility or lab is a paid research assistantship. At some institutions, you can get paid to work with faculty. These positions are competitive and may require prior work experience. They also ask you to commit a certain number of hours per week and throughout the year. So it's just not happening in the summer or during the summer. The last position that you might hear about are ones through funded programs or fellowships. These research positions typically happen over the summer at various universities and or research facilities. Most will require full-time hours on a project that is provided to you, but that you will work under the guidance of a mentor. Oftentimes, they may even offer you a stipend, housing, and or transportation assistance. So what do you need to apply? What are some application materials? First, you're most likely going to be asked to submit a personal statement or some type of interest letter or cover letter. These documents are important and are needed for an application to a research program because it allows you the opportunity to explain why you are interested in this research opportunity, how you will be able to contribute to this project, and how the project connects to your goals. definitely an important component of the research application process. These documents also enable the selection committee to get a better idea of who you are as a person and whether you are the best fit for this research opportunity. But given how important a personal statement or cover letter is or can be, how does one go about writing a strong one? Your personal statement should include why you are interested in a field of study, how the interest started and how it grew over time, how the research opportunity is a next logical step in your path toward your specific goals. So when should you apply? Can you apply as a first year student? Do you have to wait until your second year? Should research be something that you just only look at when you transfer to your four-year school? As SMC students, I encourage you to apply sooner than later. Apply as a first-year student. There are research opportunities that are specifically catered to first-year students, to community college students, and to any graduate or undergraduate year level. When researching what opportunities to apply to, identify opportunities that meet your background, your skills, your interests, your time commitment, GPA, ed plan, career goals, personal plans. Think about the skills that you have and you might be able to develop with the research program. Think about your interests, your majors, your career goal, what you hope to do in the future. Also, don't forget to think about what your classes are going to be in the future and if you're going to be taking classes during the summer. You also want to see if you could balance an academic load with a research opportunity, especially if you're looking at applying for an academic year-round opportunity. For those of you who are looking at academic year-round programs, here are some tips and suggestions. First, identify what time you have and what time you could commit to in terms of during the school year. Think of what classes that you might be taking, not just now, but what classes you might be taking the following term. Consider what types of research interests you have. Create a list of topics and subjects that interest you and start searching. Think about courses you've also taken, review some of the things you've read, and also brainstorm with a career counselor here at the Career Services Center. They could really help you explore your major and your interest. Our career counselors are here not just for those who are undecided, but also for students who have selected their major, who might also know what career or industry that they might want to go into. Our career counselors can help you explore those areas more in depth. Once you've been able to identify your interests, and again, when you're searching, be somewhat specific. Look for research opportunities for STEM undergraduate students, research opportunities for STEM community college students, research opportunities for STEM engineering students. Once again, you've been able to identify some of your interests, look internally. Take advantage of SMC. Reach out to your instructional faculty, your classmates, academic counselors, department programs, your special programs that you might be involved in. Ask if they are aware of any internal opportunities. Reach out to your department chair to see if there are any faculty who are teaching independent studies. Remember, you could always create your own opportunity or join in on an already established project. If you're looking at finding opportunities outside of SMC, you might look at the local institutions. See if they have research opportunities that are open to students who are not enrolled at their school, but are still undergraduate students. Research and find out via their websites or individual research lab websites if there are opportunities and how can you express your interest. I encourage students to follow the undergrad grad PI method. Reach out to an undergrad who might be participating in that research experience or who may have in the past. Then go to the grad student, followed by the PI who oversees the research lab or project, so that you can learn more about the lab and what is being conducted in that research project. Finally, it's really important to pitch your passion. Whether you are finding an opportunity on campus at SMC or you are looking at an off-campus opportunity, you're going to want to familiarize yourself with the professor, the lab, the research focus, as well as be able to share what your interests are and how those interests relate to the professor, the lab, or that research area. You will want to advocate for yourself and explain your goals, your skills, what can you contribute to the research. I also encourage students to attach your resume or CV so that they could get more so they could get an idea of who you are as a whole. If you're thinking about applying to an academic year-round position, when should you apply? When's the best time to look? When you're applying, you want to apply at least the semester before. But if you're looking at starting in the summer term, I suggest that you apply the previous fall and share your interest then. Summer positions or summer start positions can be very competitive as space is limited. For those of you who are thinking, I want to participate in a summer research program, here are some tips and suggestions. You want to start early. Start as early as possible. Start now. Many of the applications are due almost 1 year in advance, and they post often at the same time as others. These research applications are things that you can't really do in one night. It requires so much information that you have to review. For STEM research opportunities, many of them post as early as September to late October, throughout early December. The applications will also follow with an early deadline. Sometimes they may post the application and the deadline, and you'll be required to complete it within a couple of weeks. Not all applications are going to be posted more than a month. Peak times included are late October to early December, and then the next round of opportunities might post in January to early March. However, if you missed an opportunity with a deadline in November, you're going to have to wait till the next year to apply. I also encourage students to maximize your chances. You should apply to several programs that fit your goals and interests. Don't just apply to one. The reason is that there are several students, many students that apply for these opportunities, not just students from SMC. You'll also want to know that offer letters are not sent until around late March to June. And that is well past the application deadline for most programs, if not all opportunities. So if you're thinking about applying to that research opportunity that caters to a first-year student, make sure that you look and apply to them this time around. Some of those research opportunities require that you return back to community college versus transfer. Some might require that you're a first-year student versus a sophomore. The next tip I have for you is to always review the application process. Go through the application, the program website, look at the research participants in terms of the mentors, find out the details. For example, applications are going to be different for every program, from the setup to what's required of you. For some applications, they will not provide the necessary links or forms to your references until you submit your application, while others will send it the minute you enter your references contact information. Do your research. Don't be afraid to email the program contact and get your questions answered. Finally, make sure that you give your references enough time. Ideally, you should be providing your references with several weeks of notice. Your references should speak on your work ethic, your communication ability, your intellectual curiosity, your technical competency, your ability to be successful in that research lab. You also want to start cultivating relationships with your professor now. Introduce yourself to your professor. Don't be afraid to attend their office hours. Be engaged in class. Ask for help. Support your other classmates. Your professor has to know you in order to write a good recommendation letter. Your recommendation letter should also be targeted to the specific opportunity rather than a generic letter. So here's a timeline that can help prepare you for applying for summer research programs starting September. You're going to want to make sure that you have your resume and that you have had your resume reviewed by a career advisor. And just know that this can take several sessions. It's something that's usually not done in 1 hour. You're going to want to make sure your resume contains some projects, your technical skills, your lab experience, any relevant courses, leadership ability, etc. You also want to block time to identify and find opportunities. And once you've been able to identify them and you've done your research, you're also going to need time to apply for those opportunities. So when you are looking for opportunities, I tell students, make sure that you're organized. Create a spreadsheet of research opportunities that fit your major, your career goals, note any deadlines, requirements, program start dates, etc. And then start applying for these opportunities. You'll also want to make sure, again, that you find references and identify faculty that can write a great recommendation letter for you. Faculty that you will most likely want to serve as a reference or someone who could write a recommendation letter are going to be related to the research opportunity that you're applying to. Before you even submit an application, I suggest that you have your application and all the materials reviewed by a career advisor, a career counselor, your academic counselor, maybe an instructional faculty, your reference. It's better to have multiple people to review your documents. And so on this slide, as well as on the next, you will find some opportunities that are geared towards community college students. They may be geared to students who are at the first year. They might be geared to students who are going to transfer from a community college to a four-year school. They may be focused on a certain major or career. Some of them will also say that you don't need to have experience, and some might say you might need some prior experience or a specific course. But these are geared towards community college students, and there are many more. These are just some of the programs that I have seen SMC students participate in the past or applied to in the past. I also wanted to share with you how you might go about in contacting the Career Services Center for more information. If you're interested in meeting with a career counselor to explore your major and your career interests, find out more what you can do with an engineering major or a math major, physics major, etc., schedule an appointment with a career counselor by clicking on this link and filling out the form. If you're thinking about reviewing your resume or creating a resume, you need help with an application to a research program, maybe you've been asked to participate in an interview and you need help, schedule an appointment with one of our career advisors. And you could do so by clicking on this link and completing the form. You could also stop by a Career Services Center. We're located in the Student Services building on the first floor. You can also contact us to schedule an appointment or find out what resources that we have available to you as an SMC student. I also like to promote our social media accounts. Our social media accounts have a wealth of information, including events, tips, and suggestions. We cross-promote other workshops. We also oftentimes may record a session or a workshop, and you could find that on our YouTube channel. Some additional resources, aside from the resources that you might receive from the Career Services Center, include resources and assistance from our counseling department. There are 23 unique programs, at least right now that I know of, and many of them can provide academic support. Our career counselors and our career advisors work closely with the academic team to help you achieve your academic and career goals. So the information that you learn from us, the skills that you might need, the types of careers you might want to go into, or the majors that you might want to study, share this information with your academic counselor so that they could help incorporate that into your ed plan, whether it's to transfer, to get a degree, mixture of goals. And that is because you can learn many of the skills that are required in your industry here at SMC through the classes that you take. And your academic counselors can help plan those classes with you. The next department that I wanted to share is our STEM program. Our STEM program specifically is geared to supporting your STEM goals. They have academic counselors, they have wellness counselors, they have workshops, tutoring. They also offer a STEM math program that you might be interested in participating in. A third set of individuals that you may want to reach out to are your instructional faculty, those that are teaching your STEM classes. You will want to share with them what your goals are. What are your academic goals? What are your career goals? Maybe they could even help review your application and hopefully serve as your reference, someone who could write your recommendation letter. Finally, two areas that can help support you in terms of your writing are going to be the Writing Center as well as the English 1E consultation class. The Writing and Humanities Tutoring Center is located on the third floor of Drescher Hall, and you could receive writing support in any subject and at any stage in the writing process. You could also enroll in English 1E, an online writing consultation class. It is a non-credit course, so you're not earning classes towards your full-time enrollment. This non-credit class is also free. It's open to all students. So I encourage you to apply to them because this class provides students feedback on rough drafts. For example, classes that might require an essay, to your personal statements, to transfer schools, to your personal statements that you might use for these research applications. And again, this class does not count towards your full-time enrollment, but it's open to all students. If you're interested in meeting with me personally, you can schedule an appointment with me. My email is here on this slide, and I'm located on the first floor of the Student Services Center in the Career Services Center.